Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. Somebody left a comment on my recent David Benavidez Anthony Yarde prediction video, and this individual was warning me that David Benavidez could struggle in this fight, just like Eubank Jr. did against Conor Ben, because of the rehydration clause or rehydration limit. And so obviously I responded by saying, what rehydration limit? The guy then proceeded to explain what a rehydration clause, rehydration limit is, as if I didn't already know. He seemed to be under the misguided impression that rehydration limits are standard in boxing and that they're in place for most fights. So obviously I replied to him and explained that, no, rehydration limits are not standard in boxing. In the vast majority of fights, at all levels, including championship level, there is no rehydration limit, and it wouldn't make any sense whatsoever for there to be a rehydration clause in the contract for Benavidez versus Yarde, because both guys are tight at the weight. It would be bizarre, actually. I went to go see if the guy had replied today, but I can't find his comment, so perhaps he's deleted it out of embarrassment, I'm not sure. But this video is for the sake of people who, like that guy, maybe don't understand how prevalent rehydration clauses are, and also for some people who might not know exactly what a rehydration limit is. Perhaps you're a newer boxing fan, right? So let me explain. In professional boxing, there are 17 weight divisions, excluding bridgerweight, which is only recognized by one of the major sanctioning bodies. Each one of these divisions has a weight limit, and fighters have to weigh at or below that limit at the weigh-in the day before the fight, except for heavyweight, which has no weight limit. But the thing is, the vast majority of fighters in boxing actually choose to dehydrate themselves to get down to that weight limit. Very few of them weigh in at the weight they fight at in the ring the next day. And the reason this has come about is because most fighters want a size advantage over their opponent in the ring. So rather than fighting at the actual weight that they weigh, they bring their body weight down to weigh in at, let's say, 175, which is what this Benavidez Yarde fight will be at, 175 pounds. And then after the weigh-in, they start rehydrating back up to their fighting weight and get in the ring, and they hope to be bigger and stronger than the opponent. It's weird, but that's been going on forever in boxing. It's more extreme now because weigh-ins happen the day before the fight. When I first started watching boxing, weigh-ins would happen on the day of the fight. So fighters wouldn't be able to rehydrate as much, and therefore they didn't tend to dehydrate themselves as much because they had a lot less time to play with. The reason it was changed, so weigh-ins happen the day before the fight rather than the day of the fight, is because of safety reasons. The brain is encased by fluid, and obviously the skull surrounding that. When you dehydrate yourself, it depletes the amount of fluid surrounding the brain, which then causes the brain to rattle around more in the head when somebody's punched. And so doctors and scientists decided that it's safer for fighters to be given a longer amount of time to be able to rehydrate after a weigh-in. Rather than having them weigh in on the day of the fight, they weigh in the day before the fight. Now, this process of getting down to a particular weight limit, for most fighters starts several weeks out or maybe even a couple of months out from the fight. And they'll gradually bring their weight down, and they'll often have targets of how much they're supposed to weigh 6 weeks out, 5 weeks out, 4 weeks out, etc. Fighters will often get this down to a science, basically. Then on fight week, many fighters practice what we call drying out. And this is where they reduce their fluid intake to very little. This is when the dehydration intensifies. So the closer they get to the fight, they're cutting a lot of calories. Then fight week, they're drying out, getting their weight all the way down. Then they hit the scales the day before the fight for the weigh-in. Hopefully they're on or under the limit. And then after that, they start the process of rehydration. And even that is somewhat of a science, because if you just pour loads of fluid back into your body, there can be complications. So what they tend to do is take a little bit of fluid, usually electrolytes, have something small to eat, and gradually introduce more fluids back into their body over the course of several hours. It's very common for fighters to rehydrate 15 or 20 pounds between the weigh-in and the time they actually get in the ring to fight. Yes, that much. 15 or 20 pounds is quite common. A rehydration limit is when the fighter is not allowed to rehydrate above a certain weight on the morning of the fight. So you're basically keeping the fighter dehydrated for longer. And the idea behind this, it's usually when a smaller fighter is moving up in weight and he's fighting somebody significantly bigger, he doesn't want that significantly bigger fighter to be 20 or 25 pounds heavier than him in the ring on fight night. So he requests a rehydration clause to be put in the contract, whereby the bigger opponent can't rehydrate more than, let's say, 10 pounds above the weight limit. So if the weight limit is 160 pounds on the morning of the fight, they're not allowed to rehydrate to more than 170 pounds. Now, this dehydration and rehydration process is obviously very taxing on the body. And when a fighter is restricted up to the morning of the fight in terms of what they're allowed to rehydrate, the body doesn't have as much time to recover and be fully energized, etc., as it would be if they had the entire previous day, the entire night, etc., to rehydrate. So it's a tactic designed to basically weaken a bigger opponent. Rehydration clauses are not standard in boxing. Rehydration limits are implemented in only a relatively small number of fights. There are 4 major sanctioning bodies: WBC, the WBA, the WBO, and the IBF. The IBF are the only one that have a rehydration limit, which is 10 pounds. The other 3 major sanctioning bodies do not have a rehydration limit. For fights like Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn, that rehydration limit had nothing to do with a sanctioning body because it wasn't a championship fight. It was simply a clause inserted into the contract at the request of Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn. Presumably, if Eubank Jr. hadn't agreed to that clause, the fight wouldn't have gone ahead. Both fights. That is relatively rare in boxing. For the vast majority of fights, either title fights or non-title fights, there is no rehydration limit. As I say, it's only the IBF that have one. Now, with that being said, obviously, there are instances where, even without a rehydration limit, a fighter can be drained and weak in the ring on the night of the fight. In some cases, it's because they've simply outgrown the weight class. Generally, as you get older, the dehydration and rehydration process takes more of a toll on you. It gets harder to cut the weight, because as you get older, your body tends to retain more water. In those instances, it's really sensible for the fighter to simply move up a weight class rather than continuing to get down to this weight which they've been at for several years. Another example of when, even without a rehydration limit, a fighter might be drained or weak in a fight is when they mistime the weight cut, the process of reducing their weight gradually over several weeks in the run-up to a fight. If they mistime it, and let's say fight week comes and they're a couple of pounds over where they should be, they often do something called crashing the weight. And crashing the weight is where they dry out as much as possible without being hospitalized and eat either nothing or close to nothing. They go into the most extreme or relatively extreme starvation diet to crash the weight and shed an unusual amount of poundage in a very short space of time. That happens if people miscalculate or mistime the weight cut. And that can leave you very depleted. That can leave you very weak in the ring. Ideally, you want everything to be on schedule. You don't want to have to crash the weight in the final week or even in the final 2 weeks, right? You want to be on your normal schedule, tried and tested. And I say all that to speak of a rumor going round that David Benavidez is struggling to get his weight down for this fight with Anthony Yarde. Anthony Yarde and David Benavidez are both very big at 175 pounds, but understand that Anthony Yarde has been at 175 pounds his whole career. David Benavidez actually came up from super middleweight a couple of fights ago. It's well known that he walks around over 200 pounds, but what does that really mean? David Benavidez isn't the most ripped fighter. Naturally, he's a little on the chubby side. So just because he walks around over 200 pounds, it doesn't mean that he's naturally bigger than Anthony Yarde. Anthony Yarde probably walks around over 200 pounds or close to. But with Anthony Yarde, his body composition is very different. He's got far less body fat than Benavidez, far more muscle. If you strip the fat off Benavidez, I seriously doubt his walking around weight is as high as Anthony Yarde's is. Be that as it may, like I said, both guys are tight at 175, big at 175. So as I said earlier on in the video, it would make no sense whatsoever for there to be a rehydration limit in this contest. There isn't one because it wouldn't benefit either guy. If anyone was going to do one, and neither of them would, but if anyone was going to do one, presumably it would be Benavidez because he's the one coming up in weight. Yarde has been at 175 his whole career. Anyway, I hope that explains weight limits, weight cuts, rehydration limits, rehydration clauses, and all that stuff for those who are maybe a little unclear or confused about it. All right? Until next time, don't forget to like and share this video. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out. Are you surrounded by mindless bots in human form who adhere to the norm and blindly conform? who swallow all the mainstream BS and actually ridicule you for questioning things? Do you wish you had more free-thinking individuals in your life to network and converse with? Well, look no further. We're right here. Come and join the Brotherhood of Reason on Patreon. You'll gain access to my weekly topical content where we take deep dives on an endless variety of subjects, as well as my vast back catalogue of podcasts, videos, interviews, movie decodings, and my Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You'll also get to talk and network with myself and hundreds of other people in our members chat. You can enjoy all this via the Patreon app or on desktop and download all my podcasts in high quality MP3. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store, or simply visit patreon.com on a web browser. Then head on over to my page and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. All the links are in the description box below. And just a quick money-saving tip for Apple users. If you purchase your Patreon subscription on the desktop site or on Android, then you'll avoid the ridiculous 30% fee that Apple charges for purchases made on the iOS app. So if you're on iPhone or iPad, save yourself some money by buying your subscription on the actual Patreon website or on Android, because it's a lot cheaper. Once you've made that initial purchase, you can then use the Patreon app on your iPhone or iPad thereafter to access and enjoy your content as normal.